Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to this session on preprints, supporting open peer review and global preprint adoption trends. My name is Matthew Salter. I'm the founder and CEO of Akabana Consulting, which is an independent publishing consultancy that provides publishing, business development, research integrity, and other services to publishers, learned societies, and the like. By training, I'm an organic chemist, but I started my career in scholarly publishing in Asia with the Nature Publishing Group in Tokyo, moving on to work with IOP Publishing in Tokyo. I'm now located in Rockville, Maryland, because in 2016, I moved over to the United States to be the publisher of the American Physical Society. That's not the important part. The important part is to thank OASPA for the opportunity to join today and to moderate this session. Just before we get started, my interest in all of this has been around for a while, but it was really spiked by when I was writing an article for Scholarly Kitchen on JARChive, the Japan archive, which celebrated its first anniversary earlier this year. And at that time, I started looking into the history of preprint servers, and it's really hard to believe that it's been over 32 years since arXiv. The original arXiv was launched by Paul Ginsberg in 1991. As you know, that's the arXiv, the repository which serves the physics, astronomy, and mathematics community. And that's been around, as I said, for just over 32 years. It's hard to imagine a time before we had arXiv or before we had preprint servers. And in the intervening period, the number of preprint servers, the importance of preprints in open science has just continued to grow at an amazing pace. And it's really hard to, as I say, envisage a time when we didn't have this resource. In recent years, there's been an explosive growth in the number of subject-specific preprint servers. For example, things like ChemArchive, BioArchive, things for ecology, earth sciences, MedArchive, servers for engineering, and a variety of social science disciplines. In some cases, for example, the original arXiv, they built on behavior which existed in the discipline and made it a lot online and increased its availability. But actually, preprint servers have done much more than that. They've actually introduced new behavior into certain disciplines. My discipline of chemistry did not have a history until quite recently of doing preprints, but now ChemArchive has changed all of that. So if you look around, you'll see that there's been a really large change, an important change in the subject-specific preprint archives that have sprung up. But what we're going to talk about today, and something else which is maybe less well known, is alongside the field focus repositories, there's been a trend towards developing preprint repositories that cater to communities that are associated with a particular country or a particular language group. And I find that absolutely fascinating. And I wanted to really have this session so that we could bring on people, experts in their field, who can talk to us about this other aspect of how preprint servers are growing. Today, we have an absolutely wonderful panel assembled for you of leaders in open science from around the world. We have participants today from the United States, from Brazil, from Europe, from Africa, and also from Asia. And I'm really looking forward to having a wonderful discussion with them and hearing about the challenges and successes they've had with their repositories in their various countries and across various language groups. So you don't need me to continue talking. That's not what you've come here to hear. I'm going to hand over right away to our first panelist, Jessica Polka of ASAPbio. She's going to talk a bit about preprints and give an overview of the preprint review process and the landscape and how they can be supported by funders, institutional, journal policies, and etc. So Jessica, please, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here and very honored to be a part of this panel. So I want to talk to you today from the perspective of biology. I came into an interest in preprints from a position doing postdoctoral research and being very interested in publishing and how to improve kind of the culture of science overall. I think that, as you just heard, preprints have not really been actively used in the life sciences up until about 10 years ago when bioRxiv launched. But they provide really market benefits for researchers who are accustomed to waiting months or perhaps even years for their paper to emerge in a peer-reviewed journal. So preprints, of course, are, as we are going to talk about them today, we mean manuscripts posted online prior to some sort of formal journal review process resulting in journal publication, that enable community feedback, ideas, and discussion to be accumulated on the paper, even while it's undergoing perhaps a protracted peer review process. And another aspect of preprints that I find incredibly powerful and I think relevant for some of the discussions today is that it is easier and more accessible to post a preprint than to publish in a journal, especially as journals implement article processing charges. This complicates a situation in which articles undergoing journal publication already have to undergo a lot of revision, a review process that, as you've just heard, can take months or perhaps even years, which is difficult when you have an environment in which there's not necessarily adequate funding. Perhaps there's more temporary nature of people working in those labs and those research groups. So this figure is from a wonderful paper announcing the preprint match tool, which appeared in PLOS One earlier this year. But what I want to highlight here is that they use their tool to identify matches between preprints and final published articles, and found that the rate at which preprints were being converted into journal articles was much higher in high-income countries than in low and middle income countries. And there's also an association between whether the authors had external funding or not. So I think that there's an opportunity here to view preprints as not just a precursor to journal publication, but as really helping more research and more scholarship emerge. So as I mentioned in the life sciences, preprints have a short history, but they've quickly become a practice that is relatively widespread in many disciplines, although there's certainly areas, for example, more clinically relevant areas where there's a bit more hesitance toward preprinting. So of course, you've already heard about bioRxiv, medRxiv, also launched by Cold Spring Harbor to cater to the medical community. All of these servers and Research Square here also, I think, worth mentioning as a very prominent preprint server now, have really taken hold and now, over the course of the last few years, grown significantly. This has been aided by funder policies that recognize preprints as contributions that are relevant for applications and reports. So the Simons Foundation, I think, was the first funder that I'm aware of to recognize this, but many governmental and independent funders have since announced that preprints can be used in this way, including NIH, the ERC, and many more. Preprints are also being integrated into disciplinary repositories. For example, preprints are now appearing on PubMed, and we now have a journal, eLife, that has reoriented its publishing model to focus on preprints. And in March of 2021, we reached this peak of about 10% of the monthly volume of journal articles appearing as preprints. So we're still at a minority of preprint publishing, but I think this indicates that there's change. I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about another aspect of preprinting that I think is kind of transformative. Rather than just making science available early, they change the way that scientists can communicate and collaborate by promoting conversations between researchers anywhere across the globe. So bioRxiv does a really beautiful job integrating with feedback providers. They have this little menu that can appear and bring out not only comments left on the site, but other sources of preprint review and even social media, making it easy for people to view that alongside the preprint. This, I think, is very relevant in cases where community input is important for helping readers understand the context of the preprint. For example, early in the pandemic, this preprint emerged, suggesting that there might be a connection between HIV and SARS-CoV-2. But the community was very quick to leave comments and tweets, kind of offering a different perspective. And within 48 hours, the authors actually decided to withdraw their preprint. And news outlets such as Stat News were actually taking that commentary into consideration as they were writing their articles, which I think is an astoundingly quick way for the community to consider and evaluate new ideas. Now, of course, I've given you a really dramatic edge case. Most of the feedback on preprints is a lot more, like I would say, constructive and collegial and collaborative. For an example, Dan Quintana posted his preprint on OSF to a Facebook group and tweeted that after a interaction with one of the people commenting, actually invited that person to be a co-author on the paper. So here is a collaboration actually emerging from this type of online discussion. And this is one reason why there's now a growing ecosystem of preprint feedback. So on top of preprint servers, there is sort of this layer of preprint feedback initiatives that range from the minimalist or freeform. For example, Plotted. It's just a button that you log into with your ORCID and can upvote a paper based on whether you think it's rigorous or interesting, all the way to initiatives that are really very similar to a journal, where there may be an editor selecting reviewers, and everything in between, with lots of different experimentation happening. And there's also a framework for linking and discovery of these reviews to the preprints and more. There is a growth of preprint review. And when I say review, I mean a evaluation of the entire paper that is, perhaps a bit more rigorous by a reviewer who is really considering similar to what we might consider journal review. So over the course of the last couple of years, the time frame is much shorter, and I should also note the access much smaller, but there's also a similar growth in the kind of kinetics of the preprint review over time. And I think that with eLife converting into this new model, that we're going to see this increase even further. There's also formal recognition for preprint review emerging. So there's doctoral schools in France that recognize one of these preprint initiatives. EMBO postdoctoral fellowships previously required a peer-reviewed journal article as a prerequisite for applying, but now you can use one of these referee preprints. And there's even a statement from Plan S that papers subjected to this journal independent review process that is standard are considered by many funders to be equivalent to journal articles. So here, I think this is an example of how preprint review can be a path forward to a form of diamond open access publishing. And really to support this ecosystem, we held a meeting late last year about advancing the culture of peer review with preprints, which has a number of recommendations for how to support this kind of activity. So I will just breeze through this and I'll share these slides as well, but just to say that I think institutions should consider preprints and reviews, support preprint review services and preprints themselves, and provide training on peer review. And preprint servers, indexing and search tools can create links between preprints and preprint reviews and enable authors to solicit feedback. So with that, I want to say thank you to Matthew, and I am looking forward to the conversation that will follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that really comprehensive, but also quick, compact talk. I was really fascinated with your slide, particularly on the feedback ecosystem, and it's not until you see everything put up there that you realize, how integrated things are and the number of options that have grown. So thank you very much for your talk and for that particular aspect, which I thought was very illustrative. Without further ado, I'd like to move on to our second panelist, Alex Mendonça of SciELO Preprints. He joins us today. I think you're in Brazil today, and if I'm not incorrect, you're actually pulling double or triple duty because you were involved in today's first session earlier today, and you're also on the organising panel. So Alex really is, the person to have on this. So I believe you're going to talk to us about multilingualism in the preprint systems and services, something very close to my heart, moderation, and a whole host of other things. So without further ado, Alex, over to you for your second session of the day.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm very honored to follow up after Jessica's presentation. Really loved it. And I'm also honored to be here in this panel today with these other individuals representing such massive preprint servers. I'm very happy to be here. So let me share my slides. So I will be talking about our server, our preprint server, which is called SciELO Preprints because it's from the SciELO program. So we are a preprint server that was launched in April 2020. We operate over Open Preprint Systems, which is a system from PKP. It's very similar to OJS, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. We have about 2,500 preprints posted right now. We are multilingual, as Matthew said, and multi-area, which is something that is a characteristic, is very typical of SciELO and its products and initiatives. We have integration with pre-review in database, which I will be talking about briefly, shortly. And we are indexed in Google Scholar and EuroPMC. Our server is founded by FAPESP, which is the São Paulo Research Foundation, CAPES and CNPq, which are both a national wide agency, funding agency from Brazil. SciELO Preprints is part of the SciELO program, so which we are mostly known for our collection of journals, but since 3 years from now, and it's almost 4 years, we are entering in this preprint field as well as other open science initiatives that we have. So everything that SciELO does is in 3 languages. So since it's very oranges, we've always been concerned about having our products and websites available in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. So that wasn't different for preprints. So not only our interface is available in those 3 languages, but also we accept manuscripts from those 3 languages. Not that we don't want to accept other languages, we are very interested in accepting other languages, but there are some barriers in terms of moderation, having moderators who are familiar with other languages enough to be able to moderate the preprints. So other languages are welcome, and we do our best to accept them, but we do have some technological or let's say platform related challenges to overcome, and also moderation. And AI can be a possible solution in the future for that, who knows. We do have one case of a preprint in Quechua language, which is a native language from Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru, which we received a few years ago, and we're very proud of it because it's a different language from what we have. And this is really important for us. We're very, very proud of having this because it is an alternative for those who want to publish their research in different languages other than English mostly. So this is a distribution of language of our preprints, the posted preprints. Most of them are in Portuguese. We have more than half available in Portuguese, but we do have quite closely second and third places English and Spanish. In terms of moderation, we are pre-posting moderation. So we moderate all of our preprints before we post them. And there is a very tricky balance here between permissiveness and responsibility, because we do want to encourage early career researchers and really any researcher to post preprints, but we also are very aware, very mindful of sharing preprints that are meaningful research. So we are very concerned about posting preprints in a responsible way. And posting preprints is, we also see that it's a shared responsibility, really. We do our best to pre-moderate those preprints, but there's also some shared responsibility with the authors. There are with the research that they are submitting, with the preprint server, and also with the public, the general public who are reading that and who are sharing those preprints. So it's a shared responsibility. We have 3 levels of moderation. The first one is a basic format moderation, just basically for looking for the mandatory sessions that a research article should have. There's also a second level where we check the previous publication from the authors. So we check for endorsements, we check where they publish it, if they publish anything. And if not, if it's in the case of an early career researcher, we have a third level of moderation, which we call area moderation, in that we send the manuscript to an expert. And for that, we are using the SciELO and network editors. We are using their help, and it's been crucial for us to help moderate those preprints. So the great thing about preprint is that it also allows and invites other open science conversation, and we're doing that in SciELO preprints as well. So we're very supportive of open data, and we have an integration with SciELO data, which is our data repository that runs over Dataverse, and it's running since January 2023. So authors are prompted to inform the state of research data upon submission of the preprint. So every author is required to answer what's the status of the data, the research data for that manuscript. And this is an element that increases preprint's trust. Having the data, the research data supporting that manuscript, that preprint, is something that we are always worried, because we want to increase preprint's trust. So there is we do that using a free open source plugin that we develop that is available for OPS, and it's endorsed by Dataverse. So this is something that we've done alongside the team of Dataverse. So they are aware, and they are checking very often all the developments. And there is an OGS version available that's been released this month, so it's just freshly done. So if you use OGS and you would like to add this plugin, feel free, you can reach out, and we will give you the guidelines. So this is how it looks for the author when they are submitting the manuscript. They are asked to inform the data statement. And there's one option here that allows the author to submit the data to SciELO data, the SciELO preprints repository in our data repository, right during the submission. So they don't have to, open another tab or do it separately. They can do it at the same time that they are submitting the preprint. This is how it looks once the preprint is posted. So you have the data statement publicly available in the preprint landing page. So to increase preprint trust and to support open data. And in the case here, in this example here, you see a case where the data has been submitted to SciELO data, and you have the DOI where you can access the data. Again, in terms of open science, we are also very excited to have open preprint, open peer review initiatives. As Jessica said, we have just experimenting and over a few months now with Plaudit, using it not only as a post endorsement, but also as a pre-endorsement. So we use Plaudit for pre and post preprint posting, and this has been helpful for us during the moderation process as well. and we are also looking for other initiatives, other solutions to support that. And for post-preprint posting, post-preprint review should be the correct term here. We have two solutions. We have Hypothesis, which allows direct commenting on the preprint PDF, and Preview, which is a open review platform for preprints. We're very excited about working with these three initiatives. Preview is just we are working with them on improving the existing plugin. We will soon be using the COAR notification protocol, so we're very excited about the enhancements that will allow us. So this is also important because it increases preprint's trust. So same as with the data and having discussions, as Jessica showed in the earlier talk, this all increases the preprint trust and fosters discussion and moves research forward. We were also very privileged to work with ASAPbio last year on the preprint crowd review initiative that they have. They're running another one this year, so I highly encourage everyone to check it out. We've done one with SciELO Preprints last year, which lasted from June to August, with 30 reviewers and 12 preprints in Portuguese language about infectious disease. The reviews were publicly posted on SciELO Preprints, and on SciELO there is a blog post on ASAPbio. Here I pasted the link on the presentation so you can check it out. It's been very, very successful. The authors who were contemplated with this were very happy about the feedback that they received. So we're very excited about these initiatives as well, and we're extremely open to participate. So in terms of the next steps and challenges that we have and that we see, we will continue finding ways to increase the trust in preprint. So any other solution or tools or things that will support preprint and will increase the trust, we are very interested. Also, research data sharing, open preprints review. We also are interested in its challenge to have a more general preprint adoption. I'm very happy to see all the data that Jessica showed with the support that research agencies have been given, but we need more. So we're also keeping an eye on that. We're also interested in supporting additional language, as I said. So there's some technical challenges there, but we are open to that. The turnaround time for moderation while keeping the same level of quality also is something that we want to decrease the time that takes to moderate, but we also want to keep the quality for our moderations. So this is something that we're always looking forward. And AI tools, again, could play a role into this, which it seems exciting, but you know, if you watch the previous panel, you know there are some concerns about that as well. And also we are looking for integrating even more with journal submission systems and the other parts of the scientific communication workflow. So having said that, I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to discussion in the Q&A session.
Thank you, Alex, so much for that whistle-stop tour of all the great things you've been able to achieve with SciELO. I mean, the number of things which stick out to me. I'm fascinated by the Quechua language preprint. I think that's a really exciting thing, and you know, as somebody who has a deep interest in languages, something like that always, you know, is fascinating. So much in there, just to pick one out. Thank you for bringing up open data. Data is such an important part of open science, and it's something which is really sort of found its time now, and so it's really important to hear about that. So thank you again for your presentation. Questions are already coming in for the Q&A, so we'll get onto those at the right time. But now I'd like to move from our side of the world, our kind of hemisphere, because I'm here in the United States, right over to the other side, to China, where we are going to hear from Dr. Zhang Zhixiong. Actually, unfortunately, I believe Dr. Zhang is unavailable today, but Dr. Liu Jingyu has stepped in his place and is going to be guiding us through the contribution from the China Archive team, who are going to tell us a bit about, introduce us to China Archive and talk about the things that they've been doing in that very large and growing research community. So, Jingyu, without further ado, over to you. Looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Now I will share. Okay, very honored to joining this panel and our team discuss this presentation, and I hope you can know more about China Archive through this presentation and welcome any question. So today's topic is towards an open scholarly communication infrastructure for scientists based on China Archive preprint service. We will talk about how China Archive serve the researchers in China and globally. So first, a brief introduction to us. China Archive launched on June 14th, 2016. It's supported by the Chinese Academy of Sciences, built and operated by National Science Library of CAS, which we are working for. Now we have cooperated with some important institutions, and we have 12 specific preprint server managed by important research institutes, and we will introduce to you later. It's very interesting that after 2016, we found that more and more preprint server are named after national or regional names. Yes. So just as we mentioned before, that 2022, we have a Zhixiong. And now China Archive popularized the concept of preprint communication in China. And more preprints are published, are released in China Archive, and a great volume of views and downloads. We accept a language of both English and Chinese. If the article is Chinese, we required authors to offer English title, author abstracts and keywords in English. We set up and explore the operation mode of preprint server in China. We have the governance model. Also, we have the moderation mechanism and the screening process followed in the points just listed here. Now in China, we have an alliance called the National Preprint Platform, which 4 platforms are joining here. So we are one of the members. Also, we listed in some preprint server directory in global. Besides the preprint server, we do something more. For example, we set up China Archive Global. It's a global preprint metadata index to help our researchers to find very quickly the newest preprint. Second, we hope to talk about something about our scholarly communication idea based on China Archive. As we know, open science brings the revolutionary changes in scholarly communication. We have the new mission in this new area. We hope to build an open scholarly communication infrastructure for scientists. We work and unite with research institutes, journals, foundations, and to provide the services for them. We have 2 specific goals. First one is we serve for institutions. We assist the research institutes to build an open science infrastructure in their own fields. And the second goal is we serve for journals to help scientific journals, especially in China, to transform from the traditional mode to an open and transparent mode. Here's the figure. And actually, in the traditional way, we researchers publish their article in single journal. But based on preprint server, we can do many things. We can gather the researchers in this whole area, and we can do the open peer review on them. And then journal may accept and pick the preprints to their own journal, and then they go to the formal publishing. And besides, we can do more. Before the preprint, we can do some pre-registration, which is very popular in psychology. And here we bring some recent developments of ChinaXiv. In this year and after now, we have set up 12 domain-specific preprint services. For example, psychology, nuclear physics, astronomy, nursery science, and information resource management. We work with famous institutes in China to build on that. For example, ChinaXiv is one of them. Most Chinese famous scholars in psychology now know this platform, and they will put their articles, their preprints in this server. This is another progress recently. They just built up the pre-registration platform, which is supported by ChinaXiv, and they also bring out an open science proposal, which is a great process in China. Now we work and collaborate with some international publishers. For example, we work with Springer Nature and Taylor Francis to invite more Chinese researchers to put their preprints first in ChinaXiv. Then the journals will invite these papers if they are high quality. So that's some activities we do and services for the authors. This is ChinaXiv nuclear physics, which is released in the meeting in their area, and this is a governance model. And we have our ChinaXiv Astral preprint server, which accepts Chinese and both English. Besides that, we do a lot of activities. We hope the research community know more about preprints. To promote their research output to share and very quickly. So we go to the institutes and universities or some annual meeting of their society to do that work. For journals, many journals support the preprint mode, and more they accept that. They will release some policies. And besides that, we work with some local and international submission and review system to facilitate authors to quickly share the preprints and related data. For example, SciEngine and SciEDB, which is more popular in some journals, and we have more cooperate with some systems. That's the model we hope to set up from paper who is just a published print, and then it's be reviewed, and then it goes to the journal. That is the model, and the figure shows that. We have some practice. This year we have worked with F1000s to start a pilot project on preprint plus the peer review, especially in oncology area. And now we are just going through this work, and it ends up at the bottom of this year. Besides all of the work, we also think policy is important. So in last year, our library released its preprint policy to encourage researchers and staff to post high quality preprints. And our cooperative journals, especially Chinese journals, began, and more journals to release their journal policies on preprints. So the last slide, future direction of us. We are looking forward to cooperate with global scientific groups, not only in China, but in all the global researchers, authors, and publishers to support the academic areas to set up its own preprint server. And we are also welcome more volunteers to participate in preprint moderation process, and as well as the preprint review process. And we hope to grasp the new trend of the scholarly communication. And we also hope to work with you to do more work. So that's all. If you have any question, you can contact us. If you have any ideas, are welcome. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you all.
Thank you, Jinyu, very much for that very wide-ranging talk about everything that China Archive is doing. there's so much in there to unpack, and I hope we can get on to more of that in the quick question and answer session. Just things that stood out for me. I was really impressed by the metadata index, and one of the questions I had, and one of the things I'm interested in is how these the kind of repositories and service we're talking about in this session can cross-fertilize across national boundaries, across language groups, and share their expertise and increase the networking. So that's a really important part of, as I say, a very comprehensive and wide-ranging talk. So I hope we have time to get back to those and the future of China Archive and the future of all of the services we're talking today. But we have the final, certainly last, but certainly not least, a contribution. We have two experts now who are going to talk to us about Africa Archive, Johanna Havemann and Aurelia Munene, who are located, I believe, is it Berlin, Germany? Certainly Germany, and Aurelia is in Kenya. So we really are coming back to the middle of the time zones now. So it's good afternoon, I think, to our colleagues there. And so please, we're looking forward to hearing your contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matthew. It's a pleasure being here with you all, indeed. And I'll be sharing, or Aurelia and I will be sharing this slot, talking about the African approach to preprint-based peer review. And I'll start with telling you a bit about Africa Archive. So in 2018, we set out addressing the challenges, or the positive, like inverted challenges now. So we set out to increase visibility of African scholarly works online, because there is a consistent narrative going around that there's only so much contribution to the scholarly knowledge base that you can find on the literature search tools and indices coming from the continent. But then also, to some extent, it might be true, but then another extent is due to the fact that much is not discoverable digitally for various reasons. And there's also barriers and biases that prevent African scholars to publish in certain journals in certain places. And then there's a regional bias also that we share with other world regions. We set out to bridge language barriers in Africa, as also Europe and all the world regions really are multilingual. But in Africa, we have a predominance of English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic, which we were hoping to also address in bridging. And by increasing the visibility, we hope to reduce some of the barriers to access to research funding, because when you have more visibility for your research, you're more likely to attract research funding. And similar to increasing the participation of African scholars in internationally research networks and discipline-specific alliances. So we launched in 2018, as I mentioned, and we also launched with a bold promise to accept submissions of preprints in any language or any Africa-specific language, including indigenous and traditional languages. It's not that we received plenty so far, which is also due to various reasons, but and mostly due to the reason that much of the research is expected to be published in English, but also we therefore have diverted in other multilingual activities henceforth. So we launched as a community preprint server under the Open Science Framework, and then diversified in, like, with the onset of the pandemic, coincidingly, to other preprint software systems, generalist software systems, because, well, there were several reasons. Also because we thought we shouldn't tie a whole continent to one system. There was also monetary discussions going around, because the sustainability and affordability to run such a service is a burden that needs to be covered. But yeah, as much as preprints made also a big promise to be free to publish in, but I think moving forward we'll face similar discussions like now the Diamond Open Access communities and service providers are having, I think also next month in Mexico. Yeah, so you probably recall some of these logos, certainly Zenodo, Figshare, and then there's PubHub, Science Open, and we're still also working with Open Science Framework to provide options for scholars, which is both a benefit but also a limitation, because that might induce confusion of which is the pathway. But for that, we also have a submission form where researchers can submit their work, and we accept, because of the general nature of particular fixtures and OSF, researchers can also submit data and slides and any research output besides manuscripts, but we mostly receive manuscripts so far. Activities that we engage in include information sharing, capacity building around preprints, preprint-based peer review, that we are also happy to collaborate with Jessica and her team in the past, and also peer review, which and others, which Aurelia will tell you more about. And we're also looking into options that we see viable for the African scholarly community to engage in the preprinted journal publishing workflow, which so far has been difficult because we don't have an Africa owned and hosted system, but that's now changing, or in the coming year or two. We also develop country profiles in order to make the case for the contribution per country to the scholarly knowledge body. And you see an example on the side in the image, where we're pulling from a study that we did with partners in 2020 to map institutional repositories on the continent, and then also work with a lens for country showcase, what's coming out per country in various, like what they then harvest from Crossref, as in manuscripts, preprints, journal articles, data. And then Cookie initiative allows us to show the adoption over time of open access. And we foster multilingualism by, again, encouraging submissions in English, French, Arabic, Portuguese, and traditional African languages. We are currently in the process of, I think that's also the next slide. Yeah. So we're working with 3 South African organizations who have already done the work of translating research articles into English lay summaries, to then translate those into 6 traditional African languages, 2 from South Africa, isiZulu, Northern Soto, to Nigerian languages with Yoruba, Hausa, and then Luganda and Amharic. And you see an example on the side, and these are currently being curated or processed to be uploaded and assigned with DOIs in our pop-up repository. So yeah, similar to what Alex said, we also have a pre-publishing moderation process to ensure quality and to inform researchers, not to be a bottleneck, but to inform scholars, if need be, how they can improve their submission, mostly formally. So not to be a bottleneck, but also to ensure the quality of the platform and the research that's being showcased. And we, like all of our affiliate repositories, as you're probably aware of, assign DOIs and work with ORCID integrations. Many are adopting ROR for institutional affiliation, which then makes it possible, which has not been possible so far for any world region, but also for African countries, to measure how much research is coming out of each institution and then also country. So with wider adoption of ROR, I think we have a game changer in global equity measurements and matrices. So the game changer that we're setting on now is with becoming a unit under UbuntuNet Alliance, which is the alliance of national and regional or national research and education networks. So basically a digital infrastructure provider for research and education institutions. And we're currently setting up DSpace as a Frick Archive central hub, locally hosted, and are also then diverting into Dataverse, PKP, and Invenio, because all of these systems are to some extent, and DSpace for the most part, being operated on the continent, and we thereby hope to provide best possible services to help institutions on the continent to leverage. Also, Shout out to our partners, especially at Africa is coming next in our team, and previous team members. And you might recognize and see Johanna has been with our team, is currently now working with Crossref, and we're very happy about that. Over to you, Aurelia.
Thank you very much. My name is Aurelia Munene. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'll speak about the reflections on training and mentorship for early career researchers within the context of open access and preprint peer review. And I'll speak about the work we have done to build a foundation where we can now have more structured training and mentorship on preprint review. So Eider Africa is an organization that is committed to mentorship and training for early career researchers within the continent. Of course, the continent is wide and diverse. We have not been able to be everywhere, but the most we can, we've done our best. We have done this for 5 years now. We have what we call the Africana Journal Club. These are clubs that are WhatsApp-based clubs where we have been able to mobilize scholars, early career researchers to join these journal clubs. And so far, the one we are currently running as 698, just to give you an example. And most of the early career researchers in our group are either master's or PhD level. And the activities that we have been doing in these journal clubs that build a good foundation for preprint open review. We have done scholarly trainings, either as research webinars. We have also been having critical review of journal texts of already published journals, and we've already also been able to build in training on open peer review, which I'll speak about in a few. So for us, it's important that we are building the discussion within the continent on open peer review within certain principles and approaches. And one of the ways that we have been designing this training, including the open peer review, has been on a co-creation approach, whereby we really value the voices of different scholars that are in the ecosystem within our continent. And the idea of also multilingualism that has also been emphasized. And one of the languages which is also quite dominant that I would like to highlight is Swahili, which is spoken in quite a number of African countries. And also the approach that we are using now is cascading the training. We do not want the conversation on preprint review to remain within our organization. We are trickling it down to the university. That's why our organization is a member of a faculty organization which has representation from Eastern Africa. And whatever trainings we are designing, we do it together and we also cascade it to them, so that the universities can also start having this conversation with the students. The idea of localization, really valuing the context, experiences, the local expertise within the different African countries, and also shared decision-making. Openness, and I'll show you some of the materials we developed with a number of organizations on open peer review, which are now open access. And this is very important also for the continent to have materials that are openly available and to also have ongoing support. So this is a program, this is a project we had for almost 1.5 years. It was funded by Wellcome Trust, and we were able to adapt materials that had been initially designed by pre-review. And we came together as 5 organizations, TCC Africa, which is based in East Africa, Eider Africa, eLife, Africa Archive, and pre-review. And we were able to adapt and conduct training on open peer review. And this is very foundational for us when we start now training on preprint review. And the next slide shows the materials that we've developed. They are available on the pre-review website and on Zenodo. And we have adapted them in Arabic, French, and English. And this is very important because these are the training materials that universities can use to train faculty, and also organizations can use to train more early career researchers in open peer review, and then act as a foundation for preprint review. So just the next slide shows that how also people have downloaded these materials. They're available on Zenodo, 146 downloads. And we also have training guides on how do you conduct a training on open peer review. And we really find this open approach of resources very critical within the continent. So now moving forward, we want to work with Africa Archive. And we want to partner, we are now in partnership to really structure preprint peer review. Of course, we are going to leverage on materials and learnings from organizations like ASAPbio, SciELO, pre-review, organizations that have had structured peer review processes. And we will curate all these materials and co-create peer review training that resonates with the scholars within the continent. And then we will mobilize for preprint review. Just to mention that the members of our journal clubs who are masters and PhD students have a requirement to publish before they graduate. So we feel that really focusing on preprint and them having an opportunity to have their preprints reviewed will not only increase their publishability, but will also foster the skills of review and collaboration within themselves. And then we are going to have all these preprints on the servers of Africa Archive and preprint servers. So that's what we want to do, really entrenching the training and mentorship, and we look forward to further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurelia, and thank you, Johanna, for really a very, very informative presentation around really probably geographically one of the probably the most diverse and largest communities that we've been talking about today. It's really fascinating to hear what's been going on there, particularly about the local language ability to post in local language, and the translation part, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. Around. So we have a large number of questions, which have come in on Q&A. I'm just going to go through those and read them out in the order that I received them. And they cover the questions for everybody here. First one from Tali Bento goes to Alex. Alex, can anyone send in manuscripts to SciELO preprints, or is that only available for those funded by the organizations you mentioned at the beginning?
Thank you so much for that question. That was very important. And the answer is a big no. So everyone can submit to SciELO preprints. The only two restrictions that we have is one, it must not be available elsewhere. So in other preprint server or in a journal. And two, we do have those languages limitations. So right now we're only accepting Portuguese, Spanish, and English. Other than that, we welcome any submission from any part of the world.
That's great. And keeping on the around SciELO and Portuguese, question from Maria Mercado. Could you please let me know more about reviewing manuscripts in Portuguese? Are those manuscripts in the sciences?
Yeah, so we have we have all areas, so we accept all disciplines, and we have a team of moderators. So in Portuguese is actually the easiest for us to moderate, but we welcome English and Spanish as well. So I don't know if that answers your question. If you want to know more about the moderation process itself, I'm happy to explain.
Thank you, Alex. I think there is a question there around, as one of our contributors said earlier, very often science papers tend to be published more often than not in English, but certainly if we talk about things in the social sciences and humanities, and we haven't really got into this session about the breadth and variety of work which appears on preprint servers. When I think you move into other disciplines, it may be more common or more appropriate for those contributions to be written in a language other than English, and that's a particularly exciting thing about this infrastructure we're talking about. So now the next question is really something for that anyone I'd like to hear everyone's opinion on this if I can. Someone didn't leave their name, but how do we deal with the issues of conscious and unconscious biases which can happen during open peer review? And that's a really, really central question. So I don't know who wants to jump in and take that one to kick off with.
Let me just say that I think this is an incredibly important issue that's relevant for all types of peer review and also conversations at meetings and just feedback among researchers as a whole. I think that there's a couple different resources that I want to point to. The first being Pre-Review has a wonderful toolkit for understanding and working through bias. I think it's called something like the a bias toolkit, and they have some ideas for like reflecting on the biases that you might be imposing. I think there's a big role for training here in kind of helping early career researchers who often don't have formal training in peer review really understand how important it is to consider bias and other factors. I think that there's another issue that I think is important here, which is that in a closed traditional peer review process, typically the editor is able to kind of help moderate the conversation. In a more open process where that feedback is happening online, I think there's a role for the community to weigh in and help to kind of enforce good behaviors and point out that perhaps some criticisms might be unfounded. So I think that there's, in the United States, we call it like bystander training. So, how can we all together work to help promote a positive culture?
Very important, and you're absolutely right. I agree with everything you said there. Anybody else would like to weigh in with some thoughts on that matter?
Yeah, I just would like to highlight what Jessica said, because when in an open environment, the community are the judges. So there's more people, there are more eyes looking to that one particular review. And I think in a closed environment, it's more control, and it's difficult to hinder that, because you don't have really you don't really know what's going on, what's happening in the closed environment. So in a way, the open reviews, although they don't in itself are they don't have the goal of ending bias, because this is really a human related issue, but they tend to put some light into that and force a discussion, and I think that's always welcome.
Thank you, Alex, as well. Before we move on to the next question, I don't know whether Aurelia, Joe, or Jing, you have any things to talk about or contributions to make on this subject. Okay. Well,
sorry.
Oh, please, Joe.
Just briefly, we had a session in our training of the reviewers in the Open Reviews Africa training on highlighting the biases and sensitizing. And in our case, it was interesting because everybody has biases to start from. So it's just about acknowledging that no one can know everything, and also there might be. But then, of course, what we're talking about mostly here is the critical ones that can be region specific or even racist of nature in some cases, or gender denouncing. Yeah, and I think sensitization activities and also the toolkits for any reviewer to familiarize themselves with those resources, I think is a good practice for any community to enforce or encourage.
Thank you very much. I mean, thank you for pointing that out. I think having a knowledge of all those resources that's super important. I'd like to move on because we do have a number of questions here. The next one is for Jessica, and it's quite a long question, so I'm going to attempt to paraphrase it a little bit. The question asks about the possibility of using preprints to introduce formats that are somewhat non-conventional with regard to scholarly communication. Can you envisage ways in which preprints could play a role in diversifying research reporting formats beyond the standard manuscript? Are there specific innovations or changes you could foresee that could enrich the scholarly communication landscape in this regard? Great question.
Zhang, I love this question. I think that this is such a powerful idea that preprints can be used to share beyond. It's not just an archive of journal submissions. It can be a way for researchers to share in a citable, versioned, free weigh any kind of material that they need to. Well, different preprint servers have different guidelines on the kind of content that can be posted. We've seen some really fantastic case studies of researchers posting a preprint in progress. So posting a preprint very early in the research process, getting feedback, updating it substantially, expanding it dramatically over time. We are now working on a project encouraging researchers to turn their conference posters into a preprint and then updating it over time so that, you know, this is a way to share the work they're sharing with their community, with the whole world. And I think that there are certainly other ways to envision moving beyond the PDF, moving beyond the article, including, you know, executable code in preprints. I really think that the majority of researchers now are thinking of preprints as a way to archive their journal submissions. And so I think that, you know, right now, preprint servers are moving along, tracking with what people are submitting to journals. But I think that if we could build this culture where people see preprints as a way to share intermittently and share early, in addition to kind of this more formal form of archiving, I think we could really do a huge amount. So, you know, lots of interesting examples with, you know, different publishing platforms out there. And I think that this is a really important area for the future.
Thank you, Jessica. I absolutely agree. There's a lot of flexibility that's afforded by the system, and I think people are looking and using that in innovative ways, and I'm sure that's going to continue. Thank you very much. Next question, we're going over to China, to Jingyu, a question for you. Thanks for the presentation. Has the Chinese Academy of Sciences, CAS, or other research institutions publicly supported the use of reviewed preprints for research assessment and for use in grant applications? Really, really central question.
Okay, thank you for this question. Actually, not yet. CAS CAS don't have the policy, doesn't have the policy that support to fund the preprint, which is reviewed. So that's the work we are doing. We are encouraged, and we are doing the research and to make it more clear and how the reviewed preprints can be founded, because there are many obstacles or concerns from the funds, for example, the quality and how to make ensure the quality. And beside that, the open science of CAS, we have some policies in 2013 to encourage the OA open access policy. But after that, we don't have more policies on open science or preprints. So that's the work we are doing. We are now we're doing many research on that, and we hope we can work with many research institutes and work with international publishers to make their concerns more clear or less. So maybe one day the reviewed preprints can be founded. That's the way we are just working on. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is certainly these policy changes need to be considered really carefully, and I know they can take some time, but it's good that people are obviously thinking about that very crucial element of how preprints can be used. I've got the next question. Again, person didn't leave their name, but thank you for your question. Could any panelists talk about your views on encouraging authors to include accepted versions of manuscripts on preprint servers? For example, you know, a green OA. I'm going to just maybe see this. I'm going to skip over maybe Joe, Aurelia, where we can get your thoughts on that question. Posting accepted versions of manuscripts on preprint servers.
Yeah, we invited those from the onset because many African journals or international or other journals, well, any journal where many African scholars publish in, do not necessarily assign DOIs to make them accessible through the databases. So therefore we encourage to also consider, so yes, but then I think maybe Jessica and Alex can speak to the difficulty once there is a DOI for a journal article already, and then you also publish the postprint, which you may want to because it might have still a different version from the version of record in the journal. Or no, it's the same. So depends. Otherwise, if you want to, well, there's several. I'm losing myself, but I think there's various versions a manuscript goes through. And if it's the same version of record, you might want to reconsider or make sure that either is connected to the other. That makes sense.
Maybe I'll just echo what Joy is saying. I think because some of these conversations are not new in the continent, but still like other places, acceptability of preprints and also posting already published journals is still a journey. So I think it's good to have them there as conversations continue, so that this can also create more visibility and incentive for people to see that these are really spaces that can be of value to school.
Thank you both. Jingyu, Alex, Jessica, any thoughts you'd like to just add to those contributions? Alex?
Yeah, I actually love that question, because we are doing that. We are facing that right now in SciELO, and we are lucky enough to have a very close relationship with our journal, so that allow us to encourage the journals, to encourage authors to do that, to post the author version on preprints, because journals are traditionally the ones receiving first the manuscript, where preprints are changing that, but traditionally speaking, is the journals that are receiving. So one way that SciELO is seeing that is that we should encourage journals to select certain manuscript, maybe not all at first, but select potential manuscripts that could do great as a preprint, that have this urgency that needs to be shared, and then encourage authors to do that, because authors not always do. If there isn't like a policy, like something in return, that they might not do it. So that we need the journals to help us in that regard, in that area, to promote the user preprints and the benefits. So we're doing that. We're kind of like having many arms with the journals. So we're just one with the journals together, and encourage authors to do that. It's one way to achieve that. Great question.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have to move along. We have more questions than I think we have time for. But I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit in one. So Stephanie Orphan is asking, is there any data available related to percentage of preprints at the various servers that have been peer-reviewed or commented on? So I guess we can, if you've got the number, we can go around the room and we can all say our number. Maybe let's start with Jessica.
Well, I know that on bioRxiv, about 5% of preprints receive comments, and something like, I believe, is less than 1% of preprints are actually getting this kind of formal review that I talked about.
For SciELO preprints, the figures are very similar. It's less than 5% that receive some kind of feedback.
Do we have figures maybe for China or Africa Archive that maybe they're being calculated? We'll get back to you for the next time we do a follow-up session to this. But thank you very much for the question. Xenia von Edik has got a question for Africa Archive. It says, "Hi Joe, I may have missed it, but how is Africa Archive funded?" Great question.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, also funding is a challenge for such kind of services. It's been, for the most part, self-funded, but also project-based funded. So we participate in a few competitions of some sort, where we were looking towards preprint-based peer review, for example, also with ASAPbio in the past. And the project that I showed you for the translation is also funded, and we currently have a fund from ORCID for a global participation program. So yeah, a mixed approach, and moving forward, we will be institutionalized with Ubuntu Net Alliance with better financial contributions.
Thank you very much. Just trying to get through as many questions as I can before we end up the session. So I'm going to skip ahead because there's a question that's going to be answered, I think, offline. Question from Shakiru Adewale Kazim. For Africa Archive and Eider Archive, your activities may be listened to East Africa. I'm not aware of them. I don't think my colleagues do. How do we get more enlightenment? How do we get more information about your activities? Great question.
Well, basically, like Aurelia said, Aurelia, do you want to take that? With the very, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Sorry. Yes, we definitely can do more in terms of our visibility and our work and our reach. I've seen our website has been shared on this chat. That's a starting point where you can connect with us. And also, we've partnered quite with universities and with other ecosystem partners like Africa, TCC Africa and all that. So those are spaces you can find us, but I think the starting point is our website, and then we can start the conversations.
Yeah, and publishing your preprints or sharing your preprints is free of charge. For good.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those answers. Unfortunately, I think we are right out of time for this session. So I see Ruby's appeared on our screen again. So I'd like to say a big thank you again to all of our panelists, Aurelia, Joe, Jinyu, Jessica, and Alex, who have either got up early in the morning or have stayed up in the evening or have taken time out of their busy workday to bring us some really important insights. The kind of things which stick out to me are multilingualism, cooperation, inclusivity, and just really every region, every community finding the way which works best for it. I think it's a really fascinating topic. I wish we'd had double the length of time to talk about this. Thank you everyone for your wonderful presentations. Thank you for OASPA for considering this topic for coverage. And I'm going to hand it back to you now, Ruby. I hope we can maybe answer some questions offline or something, because there were a few that I couldn't read out. But thank you, everyone, and thank you, OASPA.